Joining us now, labor reporter for Labor Notes and also author of the Substack WhoGetsTheBird.substack.com, Jonah Furman. Great to have you, Jonah. Welcome.
Good to see you, Jonah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to get to a couple things with you. I want to look at sort of the broader sweep of the country and all the strikes that are ongoing and have been authorized and what you think is going on there. But let's start specifically with these 10,000 John Deere workers. Let's throw your tweet actually up there on the screen. I know we love showing our guests their own tweets. But you have here a reaction to the fact that they voted down a contract that was negotiated by their union leadership by a hefty margin. No votes were 2,518. Yes votes were 189. Talk to us about why this is so significant, Jonah.
Sure. And I should say this is just one of the locals. So there's 9 of these John Deere locals. So there's 10,000 workers. And it held this pattern, basically a 90% no vote. So what's so remarkable about this is, this is a contract recommended not just by the company, but by the union to the members. They bring it back for a vote to say, what do you think of this? It doesn't have to pass, but it's somewhat rare for contracts to be voted down by the members if the union's recommending it. And it's really rare for it to be 90% down. That, to me, signifies basically a revolt of the members. They say, this is nowhere near what we think we deserve, versus the company and the union thinking we're sort of on track. This might be acceptable. So that's what really stood out to me. And it also means that a strike is back on the table. If you follow the ins and outs, basically 2 weeks ago, they were on the edge of a strike. It was narrowly averted. This rejection means that a strike is possible again. And the union actually set a deadline for Wednesday night. So now we're back on the edge of, what would be a massive strike in the industrial heartland.
Yeah, it absolutely would. And Jonah, we've been using your reporting to kind of contextualize this. Can you put this in context, both John Deere, in terms of the strikes we're seeing across the country? We've got industrial ones like this. We've got urban workers as well. Lay out some of the top line ones that people may not know about at home.
Sure. So right now, some huge strikes that are happening are 2,000 nurses in Buffalo. I should say hospital workers, all kinds of hospital workers in Buffalo, 1,400 workers who make Kellogg cereals, brand names, in Memphis, Michigan, Omaha, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We saw last week a one-day strike of 2,000 telecom workers, people who do, bury phone lines and things like that. And just other groups of hundreds of workers are on strike right now. What's even more sort of exciting is these several massive strikes that are on the horizon. So what's gotten a lot of press is the film and TV workers with IATSE. That's, people say, 60 to 65,000 workers who, operate cameras and run movie sets, and would, if they struck, would not just be those 65,000 workers, but tens of thousands more who would be idled by that strike. And another huge one is Kaiser Healthcare. It's the largest nonprofit healthcare company in the country, and they're facing a strike of about 35,000 of their workers, mainly in California, Oregon, and Hawaii. Beyond that, there's others that loom on the horizon, but we're looking at the possibility of 100,000 workers in the private sector on strike within a matter of weeks.
Wow.
Why
now? Because, to go on strike, look, retaliation is supposed to be illegal, but we all know the games that these companies play to make an example of workers, make them pay for any sort of work slowdown or stoppage, for any sort of trying to assert themselves and bargain for better conditions. Why is it now so many workers, tens of thousands, potentially 100,000 across the country, are saying, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to take the risk. We're gonna fight for something better for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters.
It's a great question. I don't claim to have the answer exactly, but there's some obvious things contributing here. One thing I would highlight that people maybe ignore is that these are union workers. So these are organized workers with contracts that have expiration dates. They have, yes, some rights, but more than that, they just have the organization to fight back. So we don't see this sort of mass strike at Walmart, despite being a massive employer with, frequently very bad conditions, because those workers don't have the benefit of organization. So that, to me, is like the key first thing. The other things happening here are there really is a tight labor market. And what that does is both give workers more confidence to say, I'm not going to be replaced. They can't just find someone to take my job, but also is an incredibly difficult experience if you stayed in the workplace over the past 18 months and there really is a labor shortage. You're dealing with forced overtime, understaffing, workloads that are unmanageable and unbearable, as well as rising inflation. They say inflation for the consumer price index is over 5% in the past year. And finally, the last thing is that a lot of these companies, despite the fanfare about an economic recession, things like that, a lot of these companies are on that top side of the K-shaped recovery. They're making a ton of money during the pandemic. And this is true especially for John Deere. It's their best year ever. In the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year, they have made more than any other year in its entirety on record.
Wow. So that's really stunning. Really what you're pointing to is that there's more confidence for a lot of these people. Talk about how exactly the retaliation could come, how they're dealing with this. Are they preparing for what they see? And do you think the public is on their side?
I do think the public is on their side. I think it's hard to gauge the sort of mood, but I think people can appreciate how intense it's been to work at a factory or in a hospital for the past 18 months. I mean, almost any job where, especially if you had to stay in the workplace, has been really grueling. And I think people have a lot of sympathy and understanding for that, especially when you look at these corporate profits. In terms of retaliation, I think, again, I would just go back to what makes these workers able to fight on this scale and with this intensity is the fact that they're unionized and they're organized. So you might see, we see on Twitter a picture of the Taco Bell put a sign on the drive-thru saying, "We all quit today." And that's great, but it's not going to scale to the level of tens of thousands of workers who can consolidate whatever gains they get. So retaliation is a concern, sure, but the fact of unionization gives these workers just an order of magnitude more leverage than non-union workers have. And hopefully this is a message that resonates with the 90% of non-union workers.
Got it.
How have you felt about the mainstream media coverage or lack thereof of this incredibly significant and potentially historic movement of workers across the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm glad to see people picking it up. It's also people's sort of labor literacy is very low. So people will either vastly overstate it, say we're on the edge of, the most massive strike wave in history, which is not the case, or they'll think that, people are saying these workers are already out on strike or things like that. It's hard to just get the story straight. And more than anything, I just wish that, the mainstream media would talk to more workers. It's like there's millions of union workers who are fighting right now, and they are eager to talk. And it's not hard to find them. It's just a matter of priority. So that, to me, is the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have a Kellogg's worker set to join us in our next show, which we're excited to learn more about what's going on there. Jonah, the last thing I wanted to get from you today, and I hope you'll come back again, is how does the John Deere potential strike tie into other issues of corruption at UAW? There seems to be a bit of a membership break with the leadership at the UAW. They have a referendum coming up, voting on more democracy for members. Do these two things relate to one another?
Absolutely. And this, to me, is honestly the kind of elephant in the room of organized labor right now. The UAW is about to embark on a court-ordered vote to change from a heavily delegated election system to a direct election system. So working auto workers, people who work at John Deere, would get to vote on who their top union leadership is, which isn't the case right now. This is the result of a huge corruption scandal. I mean, some people say it's the biggest corruption scandal in union history, which is honestly quite rare, despite narratives. But it's also a concession scandal. So poor union contracts that have kept these workers below what they think they should be making, below what the companies are making for a long time. So we're looking in the UAW at a massive strike that is coming at a politically very tenuous moment for the national union leadership of the UAW. And it's a chance for these workers to say, we want to take this union in another direction, not just a non-corrupt direction, that's a given. But a direction that's ready to fight, is not going to settle for weak contracts, is not going to sell out other, future contracts for current gains. And that's the mood. If you talk to these Deere workers, they want to see not just a win in this contract, but a lot of members are saying we need the UAW and the labor movement to change, to be ready to fight, and to be more democratic and responsive to the needs of members on the job.
Yeah, well, it's a really important job that you're doing, Jonah. We're going to have a link down there to your Substack that we encourage everybody to go and subscribe to. One of the only people actually covering what's going on out there. We hope you'll join us again, and we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonah. Great to have you.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. It's been great to have Krystal back here. Look, just so we've been open, and every time yesterday, Krystal, Marshall was here, we had 2 segments which were demonetized. So that's just kind of par for the course about what we deal with here at Breaking Points. Once again, it's not that we care. We're just giving you as an example of how exactly we can pay our bills, keep the show going, and that's why premium subscription matters so much to us. So if you can help us out, we deeply appreciate it. There's a link down there in the description. Thank you very much.
Love you guys. Have a fantastic day. We'll have some stuff posted for you tomorrow, and we'll be back with a full show on Thursday. We'll see you then. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.